Hey there, everyone. Hope you all are doing well today, in a good mood, good spirits, and all that. So, in today's lesson, I'm going to show you how to use Excel and VBA to move data from an Excel workbook into a SQL Server table, and then vice versa. We're going to pull data from a SQL Server table into an Excel worksheet. Okay, so I have this setup right here. I have um, this data, which shows an index, a breakdown of these are actually cash flows. So these are different types of cash flows. TTM is trailing 12 months. These are the dates of the cash flow. I believe this is for Microsoft. If you look on Yahoo Finance, you'll see Microsoft cash flows, and this should correspond to that. Right down to the penny, we are in February early February 2025, so February 3rd, 2025. So all these numbers are up to date. Now, if you see this video in a couple of years or down the road, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years from now, these numbers are going to be totally different. But basically, in early 2025, these numbers jive with Microsoft's most recent filings with the US GAAP and the Securities and Exchange Commission showing all their cash flows. Okay, so that's what this is. Now, you see the data here. This index just is a counter 0, 1, 2, 3. Here's the type of cash flow and then the date of the cash flow and the amount. So pretty simple, right? We just have 4 columns going from column A to column D, and from row 1, which is the header, down to row 281. Okay, and this is index number 55. So we have 55 different separate and distinct cash flow line items for these dates, and these are the amounts. Okay, so let me show you how this works. If we hit Alt F11, we can see the VBA behind the workbook right here. Okay, so hit Alt F11 on your workbook, and that'll take you to the Visual Basic Editor, the VBE, Alt F11, and this is what you see. So I have a few macros in here. I'll demonstrate that in just a minute. Let's just first focus our attention on this. We have the full data from, pull data from SQL Server. Oh, good thing I looked at that closer. I want to push the data first. So the first step is to push data into SQL Server. We have some dim commands over here. Dim is just setting all of the data types. It's good practice to set these data types. You don't have to do this. You can actually comment out all this. If I put this over here, and where is my comment? Debug, I think it's right here, right? This will add all the comments in one go. You just click on that right there. This will undo the comments. So you don't need that to run VBA, but it is good practice because if you get weird things that just don't seem to make sense and some things just don't add up, it could very well be because you haven't declared your variables as the right data type. So here we have object, worksheet, long, string, double, right? So long is a long number and it has a lot more memories than a short, right? So you can preserve more memory, you can have a much longer memory. Short will save memory, but these days we have so much memory, we don't really have to be concerned about that. The big thing really is to be aware of an integer or a double. If you want decimal places, here we actually don't use decimals because these numbers are huge. These are all in billions. So this is 122 billion. It looks like million, but this is multiplied by 1,000. All right, if you look at Yahoo Finance, these are all thousands. This is 150 million, remember, because you multiply by thousands. So the main thing here is really to just have dates as dates, strings as strings, double is a double, and an int as an integer, right? And you don't set a double to an integer and vice versa. A double will preserve the decimal places and have precision after the dollars end, and you have pennies right here. If you set that to an integer and you're dealing with pennies, all those pennies will be truncated, right? Because it has to be a whole number. I made that mistake a long time ago, early in my career. Never make that mistake again, okay? So doubles are doubles and ints are ints. So what happens if we go ahead and push this data into SQL Server? I'm going to try this right now. I actually have a button. If I go over to Developer tab, and if Developer is set up for you, by the way, on your machine, if you go down here, the options, and then I think Customize Ribbon, I think you'll see it over here. You should see something on the left that says Developer. So it's already added in. This would be the developer key right here. If I unclick that, it goes away, right? If I click it back, and you can see the developer tab is gone, right? That's gone now. If I go back here, if you don't have it, don't freak out. You just have to add it in using the custom ribbon. And where's my developer down here? Now, I don't see that. Let me shrink this thing. There's a lot of stuff going on here. Developer, click that, hit OK. Then the developer tab shows up, right? So nice. We have that. And then where is it? There. So if you want to add an object, we can go to insert. I like these buttons right here. You have a bunch of objects on over there. You have push data to SQL Server. If I click that, this assigns a button click event to that macro, right? So we have two button click events. I didn't name it. You can easily name it over here. My button, my. But honestly, you want to have it have a meaningful name. Move data to SQL. Data to SQL Server, and you can stretch this out. Then you can add formatting on there if you want. Or you can do all kinds of funky things. Right? So there's bold. Click off, you'll see the bold. Go back to format, and you can add some colors on that thing. I can make it purple or whatever I want to do. Okay. So that's it. That's how you assign a button. That's how you assign this button. So if I push this to SQL Server, if I right click and go to assign macro and then edit, it takes me right to that object name right there. The VBA is called, the subroutine is called push data to SQL Server. And if you look close, you'll see all the variables are declared. That's exactly what we want. From Excel to SQL Server, that is the workbook. I'm sorry, the worksheet name. If you look close, that's the name of the worksheet from Excel to SQL Server. So those have to match up. The server name is in my case is my device. So you're going to have to change that to your server name, then the database name, and then the table name. Okay. So if you go over here and look quick under File, Connect, you'll see here's the server name, my device. Okay. Pretty straightforward. And the database is called test. If I want to create a new database, I can go here, new database, create the database. I can call it Ryan's database or whatever. Okay, my name is Ryan, so I'll do that. I'm not going to actually do it. And then you have all the tables here in the database on the server. And if I hit refresh, you'll see all the tables. I have two, and neither one is a cash flow table. So I'm going to have to add it in. So I have employees and all employees. That's nice. So I have two tables with very similar names. So I want this table to be called cash flow data. Okay, create table cash flow data. I have the SQL over here, and if I go to SQL Server and run that, I can go to new query. Make sure you are on the server that you want to be on. Mine is called that's the database name test. Okay, so we're in the server. We can see it right over here. My device, okay, is the name, and again, you go to File, Connect, connects to that server, and we are in this test database. So if I go here and hit this Control A to select the F5 to run it, commands completed successfully. Go over here and refresh, and you will see the table name show up over here, and we have cash flow data. Okay, so very nice. And if I select that, obviously there's nothing in there. The brand new table, I just created it 1 minute ago, so there's nothing in the table. But we have the table, now we can write to it. And by the way, that is called what is it? I always forget these things, so I have notes over here. Data definition language. So DDL, data definition language, that is create table. That's what we just did. If you look at the syntax over here, I'm giving it to you in my notes. Create table, cash flow, name the table. So any kind of create table, alter table, drop table, that's DDL, data definition language. Data manipulation language is insert, update, and delete. I'm sure you've seen this before. You're inserting new data. We'll see that in a minute. Update. We'll actually see both of these, and then delete. If you have to delete data, probably 90 to 95% of the time, maybe 99% of the time, maybe in your case, if you don't even have developer rights, it's going to be a select. So data query language, you'll use DQL by and far most of the time. Okay, so if we go back here to Alt F11, you can see the code. So this is the name of the subroutine. It's coming from this sheet, going to that server, that database, and that table name. And I want to pull everything from this range. So I'm getting the last row here. If I hit off F8 a couple of times, you can see the variable 281 is equal to this 281 down here. If I scroll down, scroll down a little bit. Sorry, I have a cold here. Clear my throat 500 times a day. So 281 is the last cell, right? So that jives with that. That is the last row. That's how you get that. And the connection type is ADO-DB. So ADO is a technology that's been around for generations now, 25 years, maybe more. You can look it up. That is creating a connection from Excel to SQL Server. And then we're going to put in a few basic identifiers here. So server name, if I do Control F, look for server name and find next. So server name goes there, right? Comes from there and goes into this connection string. So database name is here. and database name goes there. So that is also in the connection string. So very convenient, pretty straightforward. This is integrated security, right? So I have Windows level security on here. If we go back here to check database, Windows authentication. Now you might have SQL Server authentication. We have to put in login right here, and then password. And that's going to be like not encrypted, but what's it called, like blocked out or whatever, right? So I don't have that level of authentication on my database. If you have that, you just have to put in a slightly different command into your connection string here. Okay, I'm just using the integrated security, so I don't have that. You might have that, you might not have that. For I equals 2 to last row, remember last row is 281, so we're starting in row 2, which basically is equal to the first row of data, right? Because the headers are in row 1, so we're starting from here, going down to 281 and going over to the right. So we're going to capture all of this data and push that into the database. Okay, and this is the command that does it, insert into. So this is the, I just told you and I actually forgot, this is not the DQL, the insert DML, data manipulation language. So here is the DML. Whoops, I'm sorry, clicked the wrong thing. So here's the DML, go back here, insert into, we're taking all of this data. This is the SQL statement right here, right? And inserting that into the table in SQL Server. Okay, pretty straightforward. Then when it's all done, we execute the SQL. So we're doing line by line. Next I, for I equals 2 to last row. So we're doing this 2 to 281. So basically 281 minus 1 is 280 times. We're running this 280 times. Then we close the connection string and send it to nothing. It's good housekeeping to close it and send it to nothing. If you leave that as is, it's just going to be running in the background. If you go down here into Task Manager, you will see it over here running. And basically, it's going to slow down your processor over time, especially if you have a lot of these things. I've seen people do this. They could have dozens of these things running in the background. You don't want that because it's going to slow down your computer. And eventually, you can have some weirdness occurring that you just can't understand because you have too many things running, too many processes. These are processes running, right? So it's good to close the connection string and to set that to nothing when you're all done. Okay, so that's how it works. If I hit F8 a few times, we can see how this works. Okay, we're looping from row 2 to last row, 281, and I is now at row 7. This increments every time I go through, right? That goes to 8 and 9 and 10, 11, and so on until we get to 281. If we go to SQL Server and select everything all from cash flow data. And of course, SQL is not case sensitive, so we can select that and run it. We don't have to have the uppercase. And there we have the index, the breakdown, and the attribute and the value, and we have 7 rows. Okay, so if we keep going, we will have more and more rows appended into the table. So I'm going to hit F8 and go through line by line, right? And we are up to about 17 rows. If I hit refresh here, select it F5, now we're up to this point right here, and I'm going to just hit F5 to run it until the end. F5. It's pretty quick. Takes a few seconds. Now, if you have a massive data set, it's going to take longer, right? Several seconds, maybe several minutes. If you have a massive data set, data successfully pushed to SQL Server. So let's see what this thing looks like. Okay, and that message, by the way, comes from here. It's nice to have confirmation at the end. Message box pops up. Push to SQL Server, right? Everything between the quotes is presented in that Windows box. And if we go back here and look at this, we will see F5 starts with 1221, okay, and goes down to what is it saying down here? 1221 down to 56118. If we go back here, go up to the top, 1221, right? And then 56118. So we got everything. So that's the 56118. We'll highlight that. All right, and we saw the, what was that, 1221, whatever the thing was. Yeah, 1221. So everything is a SQL Server. So nice, very fast, very efficient. We've taken something that we have, we're working on in Excel. At the end of the day, we want to upload our data to SQL Server. So we can share this with the team. The DBA can do whatever they have to do. We can share this with a client or another stakeholder. Once it's in the database, we can have all kinds of connections to this data going out to multiple different end users, and they can share that quickly and easily. Much easier to do that than to share an Excel workbook. So if you share this as an email attachment, I make a change, you make a change, we can't see each other's changes. If a change is made to the database, that is locked and preserved. At some point, you have to talk with the team when that is finalized. But once that is in the database, you're done, right? There's no more changes. You can make changes on your end to your spreadsheet. The other guy can make it to his spreadsheet. Some girl can make it to her spreadsheet. Doesn't matter. Once it's in the database, that is the actual truth, right? The single source of truth should live in the database. It should not live in the spreadsheet, right? So once you're done with your work, save it to the table in the database and you're done, and that's a single source of truth, okay? So let's take one more look at this. Now, let's say I put this in the SQL Server again. If I go push the SQL Server and write it, let's see what it does. Okay, it's working, looks good, right? Data pushed to SQL Server, excellent. So we have everything we need, right? Let's just go confirm really quick, just do a quick sanity check, and we have 1221, right? And we had 181 rows minus 1 for the header. Now we have 560. So how do we get 560 from 200? What was it? 230? What was the number here? Sorry. Go down here. 280. So 280 times 2 equals 280 times 2. 560. So now we have 560 rows, but we only have 280 here minus the header. So how did that happen? We basically wrote the data to the database a second time, okay? So now we have duplicates, and if we do it a third time, we'll have triplicates, and one more time we'll have quads. You definitely don't want that, okay? So you have to be careful when you're writing from Excel to SQL Server. The database is just capturing everything that you send to it. It's not doing any kind of sanity check or, housekeeping. Are these numbers new and updated, or is this the original data set? The database doesn't know, right? It just captures what you send to it. We click the button twice, so we have a bunch of duplicates. That's what you don't want to do, okay? So be very careful about that. Let's do delete all from cash flow data. I don't think we need the star. I think in this syntax, I don't have a star. Delete from data 560 rows purged, and if I do a select, we have nothing in the database. Okay, so the first time we did it, it was fine. We did it second time, that was an accident, right? Let's call that an accident, and we duplicated all our data. So how can we prevent these accidents from happening? We can use a technique called an upsert. So an upsert is very cool. The first time we did an insert, we insert everything. An upsert is doing an update. If the data is different, something's changed, we're doing an update. If the data is new, we're doing an insert. So an upsert is a combination of an update and an insert, both. Okay, let's look at the syntax. Okay, this is really the way you want to do it. You don't want to make that mistake I just made and do duplicates or triplicates or something like that. It's going to get really crazy really quick. Don't do that. You want to update and an insert. Okay, so if the record doesn't exist, it inserts the record. That's the insert. If the record exists, it doesn't update saying, okay, this is a new record. We need to update with new information as it becomes available. The record doesn't exist. Let's insert it. This is new information we're seeing for the first time. Okay, so we have the same setup here, declaring all the variables, server, database, table name, right? And you see this is a connection string, server name, database name, so on and so forth. And we have a similar kind of scenario that we saw before, but now we're doing a merge into table name. If you look over here, this is just pure insert, right? So this is what? DML, I think that's what it's called. Let me go back here and just check this quick. This is insert, yeah, DML, so data manipulation language. DQL is when you're creating a table or altering, so this is the DQL. I'm sorry, DDL, sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied here. DDL is creating the table, dropping a table, so you saw that over here. This is DDL, right? This is DDL. And DQL is the query, right? So let's just keep that straight. So go back here, go to Alt F11, Alt F11, and then instead of doing a straight insert, that's what this does. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. This is a little bit more complicated, but really the preferred way to do it. We have a merge into table name, index values. Okay, on target. So we are looking for that target and the index, right? So the index is in that first column. If I pull this down a little bit, the index is in that first column A. right? So you're matching these indices. So you look at the index and basically saying row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The index is just an incrementer that shows you like the location of each row. That's all it is. It's a unique identifier, and it's just counting the rows 1 through whatever, 281, I think that's what we had. And if it's matched, then we're going to do an update. If it's not matched, then we do an insert. Okay, so matched, we have to do an update, and not matched, insert. So that is the upsert. This is the update if matched, otherwise insert. So upsert is like UP because it's part update and part insert. PDA. Right, that should be pretty obvious by now. It's abundantly clear what that's doing. So let's take a look and do this insert. Nothing is in the table, so I think everything is just going to go in as is. So if we look here, assign macro, just making sure it's going to update data to SQL Server. Okay, the first was push. This is an update, so I assign that. We run that. Okay, it's doing the upsert right now. Update if it doesn't exist, insert. Sorry, update if it exists, insert if it doesn't. Okay, update if it exists, insert if it doesn't. Going a little bit slow. Data successfully updated. Okay, and let's take a look. SQL Server, show me what you got. Okay, and there's a value, and we have what? If we go down to the end, scroll down here, it's a little bit more efficient probably. Okay, we have 280, yep, and 56118, and start with things. Start with 1221, right? Okay, so we go back here. 1221, that's what we got there, and then 56118. Okay, so if I do it a second time, we should be safe. Whoops, hit the wrong direction. If I do it a second time, should be safe. Should have the same number of rows. It's going to do an insert. Remember, if anything new is added, but nothing was added, we didn't do anything, literally. I just clicked the button twice. And an update if it's different. So insert if it doesn't exist, update if it exists. Okay, go back here. Let's look at the table and select all. Okay, and we have 1221, so that looks nice. And 280. Okay, and see, it doesn't duplicate. It doesn't give us a 560. I think it was 560 last time. Because everything was in there, so there's nothing to update, nothing to insert. It does nothing, literally, it does nothing. But let's say we do have a couple little updates, and I'm going to put $90. So 1221-45090. Okay, and at the end, I'm going to do a 70. Okay, again, it's going to look at the index. Okay, see if anything is different. If it's different, do an update. If nothing's changed, do nothing. And if there's a new record, do an insert. Let me just do the 100. Let's see. Just push this down and do this 100, this 100. I like 100, okay? And some date. So this is new. So that is going to be inserted. This is going to be updated, and everything else will be left alone, okay? So why did it go to 100? Oh, you know what? It's just counting. It's just incrementing up. That's fine. It doesn't matter. So upsert. Let's run it. Okay, and see what we get. I can pretty much predict what's going to happen. We're going to have a 90 added to the first row, 70 added to last, and then the very last record is 100. Okay, so let's just do a quick sanity check. 90, and then 70, and then 100. You see that? There's a 70, there's a 100. So we go back to the database, select everything, and I hope it worked. 90, got it. Okay, that's exactly what I would expect. And then down here, we have a 70, and then 100 with the new record. So this is the best of both worlds, right? You have the update if it exists, and we have an updated value, update it. If it doesn't exist, insert. So that's the upsert, and the new record, just add the new record, right? So it handles every possible scenario. We are in good shape. And well, that's it, guys. That's it for that. I'm going to delete that. And the data set originally had 0, 0, not 7, 0. I'm just going to reset that back, okay? Oh, and that one is the same, F2 to edit. Okay, 0, 0. Okay, so there was one more thing I want to show you. Now we go from SQL Server to Excel. So let's say the data is in SQL Server and you want to pull it into Excel so you can work at it. Remember, so this is a single source of truth in SQL Server or any database that you use. Everything is refined, cleaned, polished. It's in a good state, structured, and preserved in a way that anybody can use the data quickly and easily, right? When you get into a spreadsheet, you can play around with it, manipulate it, change it, do whatever you need to do. But you don't necessarily want that in a database. You want high data integrity, super integrity on the database, right? When you get into Excel, You can manipulate it, manage it, enhance it, um, muck around with it, do whatever you want to do. But in a database, you really want to preserve the data integrity, okay? So if I go over here, right-click, assign macro, let's see where this is going. Pull from SQL Server, okay, double-click, it's going to take me to that module. Oh, wait, I just assigned it, I'm sorry. Go to Edit, pull from SQL Server, Edit. That takes me to the module. Again, it's just over here. If you double-click, you have from from Excel to SQL Server, and if you go up here, we'll see the first macro. That's push to SQL Server, right? That is the insert. So I see that insert into right there, nice. And that is a simplistic way to do it. This is a little bit more evolved. It's more refined. It's more mature way of managing your data, and really, honestly, the preferred way. This is the way you should be doing it. Merge into, okay, update. That's the up, and the cert comes from here. That's the upsert. But in this case, it's very similar, just slightly different. We're going to SQL Server, from SQL Server to Excel. Okay, that's the name of the spreadsheet that I'm on here. Look at the name of the sheet, from SQL Server to Excel. Look at the sheet at the bottom, right? So it's pretty obvious. Then we set the identifiers for the server name, the database name, and the table name. Select. Okay, and you're selecting, this is the index, and it has square brackets because index is a reserved word, right? If you look in SQL Server, index is a reserved word. You can't really use that in Excel without causing some errors, but if you have square brackets, you can use a reserved word. That's why we have it in brackets. Attribute is the same thing. That's a reserved word. I realized after I set that name, so I had to put square brackets. Otherwise, I'd probably use something a little bit different. And select all from table name, which comes from right here. Okay, you have the connection string right here, just like we saw before. Now we're using an ADODB, just like before. We're calling it record set. RS is record set. We open SQL. That is right here, the SQL command, and connection comes from the connection string. And we literally just go through every record set, and fields.count -1. So it goes all to the fields, -1, just to make sure you go back to the last field. This will set to the last, otherwise it goes to the next empty field. We don't want that. And this is row 1, I plus 1 is incrementing by columns. It's always row, comma, column. So this is row 1, column. I plus 1 is 1 plus 1, 2, and then it gets to 3 plus 4. And this is 1, so it starts at 1 and it goes till the end. Okay, and the last column is basically worksheet, ws.columns. Worksheet comes from where? From here. So that worksheet equals, that's the name of the sheet, right? So if you don't study, if you don't understand the code, that's fine. Just study it, spend a little time. It should be intuitive. If you use Excel VBA, that should be very intuitive. If you've never used it, this is a great way to get familiar with this, right? Familiarize yourself and get intimate with it. I think if you find a couple use cases, you'll start doing this stuff all the time. At the end, we're setting record set to close, connection close, record set nothing. Okay. And just like we did before, we cleaned up the environment. So we go down here, set connection to close, connection to nothing, and connection to nothing. We're doing the same thing here. So SQL Server to Excel, let's run it. F5 will run the macro. Okay, data successfully pulled from SQL Server. That's pretty fast. Okay, it's actually faster to do a pull than to do a push. And we have 100. I didn't clean out that table, and I didn't update that. I updated that in a spreadsheet, not in the table. That's fine. That's totally fine, right? It just did what I told it to do. It pulled the data straight from the table. And again, if I delete it, the data could be updated by one person on our team, right? Maybe somebody handles this from Excel to SQL Server. Maybe a different person does this. Maybe the same person does both. It really depends on how your team is set up. But again, if I click the button, it fires the event and pulls the data from the server into Excel. So that's it, guys. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. I'm not going to let this one drag on. It's been almost 30 minutes. I'm going to wrap it up here. Thanks so much for your time. Hopefully this was edifying and enlightening and useful to you. I try to make all my demos useful and pragmatic and practical too, so anybody can see what's going on and pick it up pretty quick and pretty easily. So I'm going to share this code with you guys. Keep an eye out for that. I'll post the code when I post a video, just a little bit and just a little time here to get a couple things situated. Then I'll post it, and that's pretty much it, guys. I will see you in the next video. Okay, take care. Talk to you soon. Bye.